It's crucial that Brexiteers in the House of Commons and outside do not allow Keir Starmer to take Britain back into the EU via the gradual cessation of powers and re-subjection to European regulations. Brexit was too hard fought to be relinquished through the back door.
What a difference a general election makes. Parliament is now refreshed and renewed, and people like Rees-Mogg are no longer there to make decisions for us. Doesn't stop him whinging, of course, in the sidelines. But Parliament does seem to be getting on with the job of sorting out Brexit and pushing forward for a veterinary agreement. But equally, it's interesting to note that Labour MPs in particular are pushing the government already to go further and improve the relations with Europe.
A fortnight ago, the Minister and I met the Taoiseach Michael Martin in Hillsborough, where we discussed strengthening relations between our two governments, given the importance of our relationship with Ireland. The Prime Minister and the Taoiseach also held a bilateral meeting ahead of the European political community last week.
Dr. Alderson-Govt.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and may I also thank Secretary of State for his answer. Duchess China, which I believe, Mr. Speaker, are the suppliers of your very excellent commemorative China service, is based in my constituency, Stoke-on-Trent South. The Republic of Ireland is an important export market for the company, and Northern Ireland is an important part of its domestic market. Can the Minister tell us how relations across the Irish Sea and Northern Ireland island borders be enhanced for the benefit of companies like Duchess China?
Well, I congratulate my honourable friend on the company that she mentions and the products that it produces. We are committed to protecting the integrity of the UK internal market so that great firms in Great Britain and in Northern Ireland are able to sell right across the United Kingdom and internationally. And for Northern Ireland in particular, it has extraordinary opportunities and so much potential, which we now need to build on. One of the most important contributions the executive can make is to ensure executive stability, because that's what investors are looking for.
Emily Darlington.
Can I congratulate the very honourable member on his position and hope that he will be able to rebuild those relations that have been strained through the Brexit process. I'd like to ask my question, very much like my colleague, about small and medium-sized businesses in Milton Keynes Central that have had to go under because of the additional paperwork and other restrictions through our strained relations now with the EU. Can he confirm with me that he is talking to the Irish government and others about how we reduce those barriers to trade?
Well, there is no doubt that the change in our trading relationship with the European Union has brought additional costs and paperwork for businesses, whether they are selling to the EU or into Northern Ireland. The Windsor Framework is the means by which we are trying to manage that. And I supported the Windsor Framework, negotiated by the previous government, because it represented an important and a significant step forward. But the reason why we have to continue to implement it is because if we're going to get the veterinary and SPS agreement and other agreements we are seeking with the European Union...
We've still got others.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Anglo-Irish agreement is absolutely vital, and the meeting between the Prime Minister and the Taoiseach was to be welcomed. Prime Ministerial diaries become very full. Will he use his good offices to make sure that that dialogue between Taoiseach and Prime Minister continue, to build on that relationship, to see it flourish still further?
I can indeed give that assurance, and my right honourable friend has agreed there will be an annual summit. We are committed to implementing the Windsor Framework in good faith, in partnership with the EU, and taking all steps necessary to protect the UK internal market. We are also looking to negotiate an SBS veterinary agreement with the EU, which could help.
Will you commit to all the provisions of the Safeguarding the Union agreement?
I already set out my answer to that in response to his honourable friend who speaks from the front bench. We are taking those commitments forward. But I would also point out to the honourable gentleman that it is by working in partnership with the European Union we can make progress, and what was achieved recently on dental amalgam is a really, really good example of precisely that.
Our bright-eyed and bushy-tailed new Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, made his debut in European diplomacy today, using an international summit at Blenheim Palace to address the continent's most pressing issue of illegal migration, as well as a bit of virtue signalling on climate change and energy policy. However, the Prime Minister always used his platform at the birthplace of Sir Winston Churchill to call for closer ties with the EU. Our famously Brexit-phobic head of government made his case for a, quote, reset post-Brexit, declaring, "Under my leadership, Britain will be a friend and a partner, ready to work with you, not part of the European Union, but very much part of Europe." Arch-Remainer Sir Keir is by his own reckoning seeking to distance himself from the previous Conservative government's approach to European relations, such as dismantling the possibility of withdrawing from human rights agreements. However, when considering the vague, non-committal term reset in the context of the Prime Minister's own record on European affairs, while he specifies not part of the European Union, but very much part of Europe, it is clear that he is returning Britain into EU jurisdiction through a combination of stealth and domestic measures. Keir Starmer's historic record as shadow Brexit secretary under Jeremy Corbyn, whom he has served but subsequently expelled from the Labour Party, displayed a wish to reverse Brexit. He was even committed to a second referendum. Writing for the Evening Standard during the 2019 general election campaign, he said, "In the first Queen's speech of a Labour government, we will immediately introduce legislation for a referendum to take place. That referendum will take place as soon as possible and no later than 6 months from a Labour government taking office." This may be old hat, but today his newly appointed Minister for European Union Relations, Nick Thomas-Symonds, said Brexit tarnished the UK's global reputation and that the UK is turning inwards when actually Britain should always be turning outwards to the world. And just this week, Starmer took a stealthier approach to bring us back under the European yoke. The Economist's Matthew Holhouse highlighted the explanation of some legislation from yesterday's King's speech which would allow ministers unilaterally to mirror future EU product standards. Watch out for your smoky bacon crisps. This is partly because of the Windsor Framework, and it already sees this happening in Northern Ireland, where EU law comes into effect automatically. This, in effect, reverses the post-Brexit powers of regulating our own goods for our own consumption and would allow any future regulation set by the EU, which we have no say in determining, effectively to be adopted by default and with minimal scrutiny. It's further evidence that the blob is still in charge. The scenes from the Commons yesterday of Rishi Sunak and Oliver Dowding laughing away with Sir Keir Starmer and Angela Rayner on the way to hear the King's speech was a visual representation of the minimal difference between the old administration and the new. The Starmer effort simply seeks to enable their progressive leftist agenda further. The British people did not vote to leave the EU so that ministers could streamline EU regulations into statute with minimal scrutiny from elected MPs. Indeed, in His Majesty's new Labour government, our main representative on the world stage, Mr David Lammy, tried to subvert the will of the British people before the process had even begun. He urged Parliament to reject the result of the referendum, stating the result was advisory and attempting to move the goalposts just because the process had even begun. He urged Parliament to reject the result of the referendum, stating the result was advisory and attempting to move the goalposts just because he didn't like the outcome.
Last week's referendum was an advisory referendum, given, frankly, that we had a referendum that should have been a two-thirds majority for such a constitutional change. And I'm very clear, I will not vote for Brexit in this country on behalf of my constituents and let down the young people of Britain. I won't do it.
With our two primary spokesmen on the world stage having a long history of wanting to delegitimise the result of the EU referendum, it's crucial that Brexiteers in the House of Commons and outside do not allow Keir Starmer to take Britain back into the EU via the gradual cessation of powers and resubjection to European regulations. Brexit was too hard fought to be relinquished through the back door.
Thanks for watching. Don't forget to comment below, and if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe.